Now, the Albanese Labor government's weakness on national security and its inability to level with the public continues to be exposed after a day of damage control over the Chinese live firing exercises in the Tasman Sea last week. As we showed you last night, Australia was given no warning about China's actions. We didn't know about the live firing exercise until about an hour after it started, because an alert was picked up by a Virgin Airlines pilot.
Security. This is Chinese Naval Task Force.
To our knowledge, the notification was that call that had made from when the firing window opened, and that, in our view, is inadequate notification as well.
That's not inadequate. It's after it started.
Well, that's when the civil aircraft heard the call. We can't be definitive on whether there was a call made by the Chinese vessels earlier than that.
But you're now telling me that notification was not received, at least, by Defence, by Australia, until after it commenced. That's not any notification at all, is it?
No.
There you go. That's what the Defence Chief says. But this is what the Prime Minister said last Friday.
Well, China issued, in accordance with practice, an alert that it would be conducting these activities, including the potential use of live fire.
And as you saw here last night, the opposition has called out this weakness.
If we'd done that in the South China Sea, or if we'd done that near to China and disrupted their commercial flight paths, they'd be held to pay for us. And so the fact that the Prime Minister hasn't called this out is completely keeping with the pattern of behaviour he's shown over the last 2 years, which is weak leadership.
Attempting to repair the damage today, the Deputy Prime Minister and Defence Minister, Richard Marles, insisted Anthony Albanese had misled nobody.
The Prime Minister made clear that there was a notification from the Chinese, but in the same breath made clear that that notification was inadequate.
Well, that's just not true. Last Friday, the Prime Minister made no mention of inadequate warnings. In fact, all he did was make excuses for China.
Well, China issued, in accordance with practice, an alert that it would be conducting these activities, including the potential use of live fire. It's outside of Australia's exclusive economic zone.
It was only the following day, after a public outcry, that we finally heard words of complaint.
Well, it's important as well, and Defence have confirmed that China did comply with international law, and that's important to not suggest that that wasn't the case. What we have done is to make appropriate representations through diplomatic channels, including Foreign Minister to Foreign Minister, face-to-face, in South Africa, where they are both at the G20 Foreign Ministers meeting, that we believe it would be appropriate to have been given more warning of this potential event taking place.
Oh, he finally gets there. 2 days in, at the end of all that, or we might have done with some more warning, i.e. any warning at all. Once again, weakness, dragged along by events, not standing up strongly for Australia. And it leaves his colleagues struggling to explain why China would be treating Australia so disrespectfully.
Well, we have made representations about the inadequacy of the notice that was provided. So we completely agree. And it was the point that the Prime Minister was making on Friday.
Except he didn't make that point on Friday. Others made that point. Albanese just rolled over until he caught up the next day.
I've never seen a Prime Minister floundering like this Prime Minister on the issue of national security. The first charge of the Prime Minister is to keep our country safe and to make sure that we have in place the settings which protect us against any acts of aggression. The Prime Minister is either making this up, shooting from the hip, or completely out of his depth, or maybe all three.
This is just a terrible episode for Albanese and Labor on the cusp of the election. It shows either extreme incompetence or endemic weakness, or both, I suspect. It makes you worry that the PM might view these issues the same way as former Chief of Defence and now climate activist Chris Barry, given a platform again on the ABC this morning.
Frankly, it's almost none of our business, provided it's conducted on the high seas.
What about when there are flights going over this area?
Well, this happens all the time.
Yeah, it happens all the time, says Barry. There'd been an overreaction to China's actions, he reckons, and he somehow turned it into an attack on Donald Trump.
China is a global power, and I think now starting to see its future in a different way as President Trump is dismantling the global rules-based system as fast as he can. And a lot of the thought of things that we've fought for over the last 50 years are being done away with. Why should we be surprised that China's doing this? As I say, goodwill visits to this part of the world, which should be welcomed from the Chinese.
Jeepers, and we wonder why our Defence Force is in poor shape. Of course, there was no pushback from the ABC, even when it got even nuttier and Barry said climate change was a bigger threat than China. It makes you wonder if he's ever noticed the staggering growth in China's emissions as it turns our coal and iron ore into the largest maritime fighting force in the world. China now has more than 230 warships, more than the US, and they're newer too, with more than 70% of them built in the past 15 years alone. All this is nothing to worry about, though, according to the Green Left. And one last thing about China's Tasman Sea live firing provocation. The Virgin pilot who heard the alert and passed it on, he's been given the unofficial nickname at Virgin of Biggles. He's a long-time Virgin pilot who's not interested in speaking publicly about this, but what we're told is that it's a very unusual aviation warning and response. But thanks anyway to Biggles. It was good work. Without you, we all might have been none the wiser.